Joining us on the line right now is Delroy Burton with the D.C. Police Union. We wanted to talk to Delroy to get some sense of how police officers look at what's going on and tap into his expertise about what is going on in Baltimore with all of the protests, the riots, the things that spiraled out of control. Good morning, Delroy. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Thank you for having me.
Well, we always love getting the perspective of our friends who make up the Thin Blue Line, and it would appear that over in Baltimore, the Thin Blue Line, at least on the night when things started to spiral out of control, was stretched really, really thin, so much so that the higher-ups apparently made the decision not to engage the protesters, the arsonists, the people who were tearing the town up. As you look at that situation, do you think they made the right decision there, or should they have engaged?
Well, in crisis situations, it's when good leadership comes rises to the top. And, we've been fortunate here in Washington, D.C., that we have a lot of experience dealing with large crowds, and I don't know how much experience the Baltimore Police Department or the mayor had in dealing with those types of situations. And I believe from the experiences in Los Angeles and a bunch of other places, including Washington, D.C., back in the early 90s, is that if you stop it before it gets out of control, you can control the situation. But once you allow it to begin, it will quickly spiral out of control if you don't have the resources in place to put an end to it.
Can I follow up on that a little bit? Because, look, I don't know that she was quoted accurately, but I believe the perception in the community after hearing what the mayor said was they're going to give us room. To do what we want to do. They're not gonna come after us. And in fact, it became very clear early on in that evening that the police were not going to engage the people who wanted to loot and riot.
Well, I mean, she backed away a little bit from her statements, but she said it at the press conference. It was recorded that they were going to give people room to vent and to destroy and either break things and tear things up if they needed to. And I thought that was the wrong message to send to the police officers out in the field and to the community who was upset with the police department. Now, look, one of the things that's going on here is that the police are being blamed for the conditions in Baltimore and for the conditions and poor conditions in inner cities all over the United States whenever we have a bad outcome with an encounter with a police officer. Police officers did not create those conditions. That's the first thing I would like to point out. And then we also have people that are trying to blame mass incarceration and a whole bunch of other issues on the police department. The citizens of this country made some decisions in the 1990s through their political leadership to be harsh on people who commit violent crimes, to be harsh on people who engage in the sales of drugs. And as a result, a lot of people went to jail. Those decisions were not decisions made by police officers. And now, I think in an irresponsible way, we have some politicians trying to couple the two. So if you have an incident where there's an allegation of police brutality, you blame the mass incarceration and all those other things on police departments, and police officers had nothing to do with those decisions. Those are political decisions made by the people we vote into office in legislatures and county executives and mayors and governors and presidents who made those, and Congress, who made those decisions to have those harsh penalties, and that's not a police decision.
Our guest is Delroy Burton. He is the head of the D.C. Police Union, and I'm going to get a little political with you, Delroy, and you can chime in if you want, but I also, I understand if you want to steer clear of it. But here's the thing. I wear my politics on my sleeve. I'm a Republican, and for years I think the Republican Party have a lot of great ideas for urban renewal, for the African-American community. I think that the values that we try to press with regard to trying to keep the family intact and keep fathers in the home, and frankly, some of the newer ideas from some of the libertarian politicians who want to work toward decriminalization of drugs and look at some new ways about maybe legalizing marijuana, those would all help too. But you're telling me that the frustration there is not because of the police, it's because of the decisions political leaders have made, and I agree with you. But I look at a city like Baltimore where they have had nothing but Democrats in charge of that city for 40 years, and Elijah Cummings out there saying that he's going to make change right now. He's been there since the early 80s, and you look at where he gets money, and a lot of these politicians, they're getting all of their money from organized labor. The police unions continue to support Democrats in conditions like this, and the Democrats then talk down the police. I don't understand why unions like yours and other organized labor that represent first responders, they continue to support a party who continues to undermine them like this.
Well, because you're unfortunately because the party on the right has been engaged in activity that will take away some of those hard-earned, collective bargaining rights. But going back to the conditions...
Wait, but hold on. So collective bargaining is more important, and the little items in your contract about overtime, that's more important than the real life and death decisions?
No, I don't think so, and that's not what I said.
All right.
Collective bargaining is a way for the employees to have a say in about the conditions under which they work. And I think that's an important voice. And if you cut out that voice, you'd be missing an important part that helps to understand what happens on the street. But going back to your question about the conditions in Baltimore over the past 40 years, it's not just a matter of which party has been in charge. There are other conditions that help create what we have in Baltimore. A lot of it outside of the control of whichever political party would have been in charge. It happened to be that the Democrats were in charge. But the economic situation in Baltimore changed when we lost a lot of our manufacturing base in Baltimore, and those jobs that were available in Baltimore are no longer there, and the city's never recovered. That's what pains me so much about what happened in Baltimore over the last week. I mean, Baltimore was starting to rebound in a lot of areas, and the damage is caused by those individuals that want to go out and be lawless and call themselves protesters and damage the property and damage the neighborhoods of the good residents in the city of Baltimore. They disgust me. And for people to now try to be revisionist and say because someone called that behavior thuggish or called them thugs, that is somehow some type of racial slur. Fact is a defense to any kind of if it's a fact that you behave in a thuggish way, if it's a fact that you go out and you commit crimes, if it's a fact that you go out and you destroy your own home and you destroy your own city and call it protest, I don't see how someone could be insulting you for stating a fact. Sorry, I just don't see that.
I agree with you.
To circle back around, I want to just say, look, you said earlier that you felt that if they had jumped early, let's say maybe at 3:00 when the kids started throwing rocks as they came out of school, if they had made a decisive move then, maybe it would not have spiraled out of control.
I don't even think. I think it goes before that.
Yeah.
I think when they allowed the first set of destruction of property and the rioting, and the police didn't engage, and the next day the mayor said that we had to give them room.
So you're talking about early. Okay, let me ask you though. I mean, you saw the TV coverage just like the rest of us did, and what I saw there was maybe 100 officers setting up a police line across the street, and maybe 100 yards from that there were people unimpeded going into liquor stores and just walking out with whatever they wanted, and no one was doing anything. Could the police have had an impact on some of what you saw?
Well, I don't think so at that point. And
I think it's too late.
I think it's too late at that point. You don't have enough resources. Wherever the police move from, the mob comes back in and occupies. If you don't have enough forces on the ground to hold that position that's been cleared and deal with the mob that's roving and starting to create.
So maybe the bigger problem was they didn't call the mayor did not call the governor soon enough.
It just seems that unfortunately the preparation was not what it could have been, and we see the result.
All right. Well, listen, we really do appreciate your perspective on all of these issues. Delroy Burton with the D.C. Police Union, we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good day.
Thank you.